Hello everyone. You have no idea, do you? You have absolutely no idea what has been happening just outside your line of sight. The conversations you were not present for. The moments where your name came up and someone you may not even fully realize is in your corner stood up, pushed back, refused to let a certain version of you be accepted as the true one. You have been living your life, carrying your weight, navigating your days without knowing that somewhere in a room or a conversation or an exchange you will probably never have full access to, someone fought for you, chose you, picked up what someone else put down, and said, "No, that is not who they are. I will not sit here and let that stand." There is a particular kind of grace that moves through human relationships that almost nobody talks about. The grace of the unseen defender, the person who does not make a show of their loyalty, who does not perform their devotion in front of you for your gratitude and your admiration, who simply quietly, in the moments when it actually counts, refuses to let you be reduced, refuses to let the narrative that someone else is building about you go unchallenged, refuses to be complicit in a version of events that erases the truth of who you are. That person exists in your life, and what they have been doing in your absence is something that, if you knew the full extent of it, would break you open in the most beautiful way possible. The archetype that governs this reading is one of the most ancient in the entire symbolic canon, the archetype of the knight, not the romanticized, armor polished, flag waving knight of fairy stories, the real one. The one who acts not for glory, but for something far less comfortable and far more enduring for what is right. The knight who moves in the dark, who takes the difficult position, who steps into the tension without being asked, because something in them simply cannot stand by and watch injustice go unopposed. That energy is alive in someone around you right now, and it has been working on your behalf without your knowledge, without your request, and without any expectation of recognition in return. Let that land for a moment, because I think one of the loneliest experiences a person can have, and you may have been having it, is the feeling of being misunderstood without recourse, of having a version of yourself circulating in the world that does not match who you actually are, and being unable to correct it because you were not present when it was constructed, because the conversation happened in a space you were never invited into. That particular loneliness has a weight to it that is different from other kinds of loneliness. It is not the loneliness of being alone. It is the loneliness of being misrepresented, of existing in someone's mind as a character that shares your name but not your truth. And the helplessness that comes with knowing that somewhere out there the portrait is wrong and you cannot reach the canvas, but someone else could and did. And that changes something, not just in the practical sense of what impressions now exist about you in what minds, but in the deeper sense of what it means to be known, to be genuinely, accurately, fiercely known by another person, to have someone in your life who carries the real version of you with enough clarity and enough conviction that when the false version is presented to them, they recognize the forgery immediately. Not because they were told to, not because they were asked, but because they know you, actually know you, in the way that only comes from paying the kind of attention that most people never pay to anyone. Do you know who this person is? A name may have surfaced already, quietly, quickly, before the analytical mind had the chance to weigh in. Or perhaps several names, and you are not yet sure which one the reading is pointing toward. Either way, I want you to sit with the awareness that this person exists, that their loyalty is real, that what they did or are doing, because in some cases this is still actively unfolding, was not a small thing. Standing up for someone in their absence requires a willingness to absorb friction, to become a target, potentially, for the displeasure of whoever was building the false narrative, to prioritize truth over comfort in a social landscape that very often rewards comfortable silence over difficult honesty. And this is where I want to speak to the tension, the fight that may be approaching or may already have begun in some form, because what is happening behind the scenes is not entirely quiet. There are opposing forces at work in the social world around you right now. And the conflict between them, between the person who is defending you and the person or people whose version of events is being challenged, may be building toward something that eventually becomes visible, may be approaching a moment of open confrontation that you will not be able to miss. And I want you to be prepared for that, not with anxiety, but with the steadiness of someone who knows that the tension was not created by the truth teller. The tension was created by the lie. The defender is simply the one who refused to pretend the lie was comfortable. In the old symbolic maps, this dynamic is represented by the Two of Swords, two opposing forces, each carrying its own logic, its own justification, its own version of reality, locked in a standoff that cannot be maintained indefinitely. The blindfolded figure at the center is you, in a sense present in the conflict without full visibility into its dimensions, holding yourself in balance while the tension plays out around you. But the blindfold in this reading is not permanent. The swords will eventually lower, the standoff will eventually resolve, and when the blindfold comes off, when you are finally able to see the full picture of what has been happening in the spaces you were not present for, what you find will ask something of you. Not action necessarily, but acknowledgement. The acknowledgement of who stood where when it mattered. I also want to speak to something that may be sitting uncomfortably in you as you receive this, because I feel it in the reading and I think it would be dishonest to leave it unaddressed. There may be a part of you that feels strange about being defended, that instinctively wants to minimize it, to say it wasn't necessary, to feel somehow guilty that someone else absorbed friction on your behalf when you were not even aware it was happening. This discomfort, if you recognize it, is worth examining, because it tends to point toward a pattern that runs deeper than any single situation, the pattern of someone who is more comfortable giving care than receiving it, more comfortable being the one who stands up for others than being the one who is stood up for, more comfortable as the protector than as the protected. That pattern, however familiar, is not the full truth of what you deserve. You deserve to be defended. You deserve to have people in your life who carry your name with care when you are not in the room. You deserve the particular and precious experience of discovering that your absence from a conversation did not leave you unrepresented, that someone was there saying the true thing, holding the real picture of you against the pressure of a false one. Let yourself receive that without diminishing it. Let it mean what it means. Let it be evidence of something you perhaps needed to be reminded of, that you are someone worth defending. Not because you are perfect, not because you have never made mistakes, but because the truth of who you are is worth protecting, and the people who know it know that. The fight that may be coming, whether it arrives as a direct confrontation or a more subtle realignment of allegiances in the social world around you, is not something to fear. It is something to witness with clear eyes and a steady pulse, because fights of this nature, the ones that erupt around questions of truth and loyalty and who someone actually is versus who they have been made out to be, tend to clarify things with a speed and a completeness that no amount of patient diplomacy ever achieves. They separate, they sort, they reveal with brutal efficiency who is operating from truth and who is operating from something else. And that sorting, however uncomfortable in the moment, tends to leave the landscape of your relationships cleaner and more honest than it was before the pressure built. Pay attention to what shifts in the days ahead, to who moves closer and who creates distance, to where the loyalty actually lives versus where it was performed. To the person who has been speaking on your behalf, notice them, not with the awkward transactional awareness of a debt owed, but with the simple, open, human recognition of someone who chose you when they did not have to. That choice deserves to be seen, deserves to be felt, deserves to inform the way you understand the landscape of who is genuinely present in your life versus who has simply been occupying space in it. There is a reordering happening. Quiet but consequential. The people who belong close are moving closer. The ones who were never truly where they appeared to be are beginning, through the pressure of all this unseen activity, to reveal their actual positions. And you, standing at the center of it, perhaps not yet seeing the full picture, perhaps feeling only the edges of attention whose source you haven't been able to locate, you are about to understand something about your own life that has been obscured for too long, about who your people actually are, about the quality of loyalty that exists around you when you are not watching, about the fact that you have never been as alone in any of this as the harder days may have made you feel. Someone is in your corner, has been in your corner, was in your corner in a room you were not present in, at a moment that cost them something, saying the true thing about you with a conviction that did not waver under pressure. Hold that. Let it reach the parts of you that have been wondering whether anyone truly sees you clearly enough to stand by you without prompting. They do. They are. And the proof of it is already written in a conversation you have not yet heard the full story of. When the full story reaches you, and it may be sooner than you expect, receive it with the grace it deserves. Not with guilt, not with the deflecting impulse to make it smaller than it is, but with the genuine, open-hearted recognition of someone who has just been shown something true and beautiful about the invisible architecture of love and loyalty that has been surrounding them all along. You are more held than you know, more seen than you believe. And the fight that may be coming is not a sign that your world is falling apart. It is a sign that someone who matters decided that the truth of you was worth the trouble of defending. That is not a small thing. That is everything. If this reached you somewhere real tonight, if it named something you have been feeling without being able to locate its source, stay close. Subscribe and come back, because what is unfolding around you right now is a story of loyalty and truth and the quiet, fierce, extraordinary grace of being genuinely known. And there is more of that story still to tell.